Now, as I say, we finished with the rally, and we have 3 speakers, and each of them will be coming down here. And in this session, we're just going to have the 3 sessions, and then we'll just have some final comments, and we'll finish. And the 3 speakers that we've got are David Calderwood, Alex Sayer, and Felicity Dowling, and I'll introduce each of them just now. David is going to speak first. David is a Unison steward from Glasgow, and he's also a frontline social worker. He's a team leader in Glasgow emergency team, and I suppose there's not much more frontline than Glasgow emergency team. So without much ado, I'll introduce David.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here from Glasgow City Unison, proudly as a team manager and as a Unison steward. It's not an easy thing to do, but you fight the fight, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today in terms of how you can get involved and help defend services and build alliances. From the outset, Glasgow City Unison have been involved with SWAN. We've been attending joint conferences, and I think you've heard reference to a very successful conference we had 2 weeks ago on personalisation, which involving politicians, service users, carers, getting out there in terms of the issues and building a campaign to try and stop services being cut. You know, because I've been thinking, as a team leader in the emergency duty team, if this goes ahead, if someone's budget has run out and then they have an emergency, if they don't have any money, am I not to help them? I mean, these are the kind of things and questions that we're starting to get heads around. We cover the west of Scotland as an emergency duty social work team. We did have 40 social workers, and we're now down to, I think, 24, because the area that we're covering has shrunk. Now, you don't need to be Brain of Britain to know that in the things that you've heard about at this conference, in terms of when we cover child protection, mental health, vulnerable elderly, anything that can't wait till the next day, we have to deal with that. We have maybe 4 social workers on shift, 4 or 5, to cover nearly 3 million people. So that is best value, and they've done best value reviews and they've tried to change things, but actually the reviews come out saying you can't really do this any cheaper than this, but they still try. And that's one of the points that I'm trying to say. In terms of being a steward and getting involved with the union, as well as being a member, be involved, because I'm the best negotiator with employers to defend the service. I know the service, and I know when they come to me and say, do you really need to have all qualified workers? Well, actually, yes, you do. Child protection, mental health. But it has been suggested in the past by managers and personnel and HR, you don't really need to have qualified workers. Well, actually, we do. And we've won that fight over a number of years, and we've accepted that. So, other things that you can do. I mean, in Scotland, we have the founding legislation of the Social Work in Scotland, the Social Work Scotland Act 1968. We can still pay money out to people who need it, people in need. And we'll do that if we can. We haven't have the resources to meet all the need, but I think it's about people remembering the founding principles of what they can do. If people need money, they need emergency respite, whatever, we'll give them it. At the moment, the resources are still there, and if they're not there, it's up to us to shout about that and scare people, scare politicians, whatever, to say you can't allow this to happen. And at the moment, we have been able to defend the service as best as we can in very difficult times. And I'm reminded of a former director of social work that we had in the good days when the service was money was plentiful, Fred Edwards, God rest him, who's now dead. But he actually, during the miners' strike in the 80s, he paid out this money to the families of striking miners, which was bordering on illegality, and he was threatened with prosecution, but they never prosecuted him, and he got away with it, and he helped the families. And I think we all need to start thinking about things that we can do, you know, and being a member of the union will protect you if you know, obviously take advice and things, but do what you can do to defend members, because we are, I mean, I'm looking at Malcolm, my colleague from Manchester, emergency duty team, we are getting busier, and you know, we will be busier with the cuts and the lack of services and things. We're going to have to fight to defend the services, and if you have an emergency duty team in your council or your local authority, please defend it, because we don't want to go back to, we've been in inception since 1979. Before that, workers had to do it, and if you remember, we're covering more than 2/3 of the time, public holidays, bank holidays, all night, all day, more than double the time of the 9-to-5 workers with very, very limited resources. So if we're not there, the alternative before 1979 was that workers had to do it on top of their jobs. So there's all sorts of health and safety concerns about that. We don't want to go back to that. It's dangerous practice. And some of the services who have broken away from us and tried to set up their own services, there have been fights about workers getting forced to be on call on top of their jobs. Mental health officers in one of the councils, they set up a new service and forgot that they needed approved social workers, MHOs, because they didn't speak to practitioners about what they needed. They said to the workers, they sent them a letter to their house saying, 90 days, you have to go on this rota, and if you don't do it, we'll sack you. Now that's what happened. But these workers were strong, they stood together, they took advice, and they said, sack us. You don't have enough mental health officers, sack us, we're not doing it. And they actually won senior practitioner status out of that to be allowed to, to do the job, and they were properly paid for it. Because what they were getting offered was £8 a night to be on call from their house after been working all day and their families and everybody being disturbed. And they said, no, we're not doing it. And that's something that we do have to remember. We have to say no. We did it in Glasgow 2006 under the guise of equal pay for women. They came and they did a fake job evaluation where shift workers, female workers were losing thousands and thousands of pounds. And we said, no, this is not happening, we're not allowing it to happen. We challenged it. And just before Christmas 2006, we had a ballot of the entire membership and we said, we are going on strike over Christmas. We are not going to provide emergency cover in the way that the unions normally did. We were not going to provide emergency cover because the cuts that you're making are adversely affecting the shift workers, the women workers. We're not going to do it, and you sort out how you care for the vulnerable people. Now that's a hard thing to do, and it's a hard thing to say, and Unison doesn't say it much, but we didn't have to go on strike. The council panicked, it was only in Glasgow, they came to us and it was settled. We never had to go on strike and we won. And that's, if you stick together, you can win. And I suppose that's the main message. And don't forget other tools in your trade. As a Unison, if you're a steward and you're a health and safety rep, you have a lot of tools in your toolkit that you can use against the managers. And particularly, it's so important, we need to protect the workers who are doing more work. There's less people to do the same amount of work and more work. So asking the managers, have you done a risk assessment? Do stress assessments. So giving the management the evidence that actually this is not possible. Glasgow City Unison have a tool, a workload management tool. We only work 35 hours a week. Therefore, that's it. Anything else you want done, you tell me what you don't want me to do. And it's putting it back to the management. And you do have to stand up and be counted. That's my message. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, David.